Hello, and welcome to the Blueprint Roundtable. Today, we are going to talk about the topic of remote work. The
Yay.
question will be, is the traditional office, so meaning 5 days a week, coming back to tech? And if yes, how will this impact the future of tech hiring and access to top talent? So I know across the two of you, we have opinions on this particular area. So Krissy, I'll let you kick us off.
So to answer your question very directly, no, I don't think it's ever coming back in the way that it was. I think people hope sometimes that with hybrid, they can get there and then they can be like, okay, 3 days, see how much better we're doing. Now let's go. It's not. And if you like, I feel I've never felt more confident saying something like that. And I'll tell you why. People got two things. They got a taste of incredible work-life balance, not having to go into the office for 8 hours that they didn't need
Sure.
to go into, and realizing like how out of, it's just not modern, it's out of date. We're not working on factory lines half the time. No one is ever working the entire 8 hours. They need breaks. They're sitting in traffic. Beforehand, quality of life, like just no one's willing to sacrifice that, regardless of the pay, right? I also think too, I remember like at a company trying to get remote work, something where we could at least have. And I remember the executives like, no, like we'll lose productivity. And that was always the thing. And,
Right.
but then the whole world trialed it at the same time. And it was what we all knew to be, but that was just complete BS. People were more productive. Now, do I think culture and collaboration is important? Yes. Do I think that if you are early on in your career, not being in an office is going to potentially impact you in a negative way? Yes, I do. Like, we're all at places in our career where we've learned enough and have enough experience to where it is easier to have majority remote, where we know how to get the resources and help we need, and it's not as consistent as it was. Where like when I was trying to learn how to write really good emails, I needed someone like there with me to look at it. Versus, I can't imagine having to Slack that stuff over and wait for a response. But I think the office is still important, or people having some type of community. We are human beings, regardless of your beliefs, whether you're spiritual, religious, agnostic, whatever. Community is something that we need as human beings, and given how much we work, and it being a huge part of our lives as adults, like 80% of our time, right? We do need to have others outside of just like on a screen. So, like a Blueprint, we meet, at the Entrepreneurship Center, we try to every other week, or even, more frequently. But I don't think the office is ever coming back. And I think that where companies are failing is when they're demanding people be in office, even with the hybrid. Hybrid's tricky, right? That's not even doing as well in some circumstances. I get people why, but I mean, I think you've got to have a really compelling reason, or just transparent, like, hey, this is part of our culture. We want people that would be excited. I think it's still something that people struggle with, though, is like, if you don't have a really like good reason, or it feels like you are wanting to micromanage people and you don't trust them to treat them as adults, and they've got a plethora of opportunities because of remote that they didn't have before, you're going to be hard pressed to find people, especially like women who are raising families, or even other, working parents that are like, it just takes so much longer and I lose so much time going into an office. So where I'm forced to even 3 days a week. I don't think people want to be forced. And that's a big thing. So that's my take. Chuck?
Yeah, I think you made an interesting comment earlier, though. You mentioned how valuable being in an office was for someone like you early career, and I think that's an important observation that I'll build on to kind of challenge you a bit. No, I don't think the I don't think we're going back to a world where operating assumptions are that you're in an office 5 days a week and working from home is exception to a rule. But I do think that there's broad recognition now that offices have incredible utility for building cohesive teams that are higher performing and probably more productive. I think it's become clear to me that anyone paying attention can see how the initial arguments from remote work evangelists that that this would be, a godsend for early talent who could live anywhere across the globe, that a lot of this was frankly propagated by more senior talent, more executive talent that didn't want to make the commitment on their side to being in a place every day to help,
Yeah.
to be in a place to help develop and grow others. And as if there's data showing that hybrid work is not working, I'd be curious to see it. I think there's kind of arguments both ways, and certainly some indications that companies that are making that unequivocal commitment to working together in spaces as a team may be outperforming those that are not doing that. So I'll say this: I think it's complex. I think it depends on many factors, including the types of roles companies are hiring for, the culture of development and growth they have in place, whether it's proven to be effective remote versus not. I think executive work preferences play a factor too. And from a hiring side, we've seen as well, Krissy, I would say, and your thoughts on this, but we certainly have some clients that have asked us to run hybrid searches. I've actually found in many cases those clients to be more reasonable than the ones that want remote, because they're really trying to balance the value of location for better onboarding and ramp versus this notion that there's like perfect unicorns across the country and we need to find those credentials. I find as a general rule, I think that the hybrid oriented clients have been a little bit more reasonable, not less.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with that piece. I do think for our clients specifically, I just think when you look at like Goldman Sachs or, some of the, and those are like in the financial world, just what they were demanding and how they went about it, it was backfired immensely, right?
Sure.
And I think that type of, it's very like, well, I won't use that word, but the force of like, you're going to do this, like this is what has changed. This is the bigger 30,000 foot view, and I'll leave it at this. The employer having all the advantage in the workplace, in the marketplace, has changed. And it was changing starting around 5 years ago, but they still had it. It is not even near the same as even in a bad market, right? A challenging market, it's still not the same. I'm not saying they're always equal, but the employee has more advantages than they've ever had before. More, they have more leverage, right? Than they used to have.
So question though, but is it an employer flex to mandate time in the office, or could one? So I guess the argument I would make is it's not necessarily that.
No, not by default,
right?
But I think there are people that I mean, the examples I just gave, that was an employer flex,
right?
And
here's what I'd say: that I think, from a positioning and I'll call it ideological perspective, remote work evangelists want all of us to think that going back to the office is about employers flexing. I'd argue that's not the case, that or not always the case, that in many cases, right, the reason why remote work has been propagated and why we haven't gone back to the office is because executives at companies don't want to be there themselves. Like, they are proficient at their craft. Many of them are a little selfish and don't want to invest their time face to face growing and developing early talent, and therefore it's very convenient for executives to have professionals thinking that remote work is the solution to micromanagement. I actually think many companies, again, we've seen this in our client base, right? Some of our relationships, like a lot of people I know that want to go back to the office, those leaders, these are not micromanagers. These are incredibly thoughtful evangelists for talent development. Now, I say all this, recognize you made a lot of great points, and I do think, and maybe the elephant in the room here, maybe a little bit like, remote work is particularly liberating for working women and mothers who want to get back, and that's a hard to argue at that point, right? So it's a complicated topic, but where I get animated, right, is this idea that remote work equals employee autonomy, right? I don't think that's always the case. I think it's convenient to see it that way. And that's why I always say this is a complicated topic.
It's not a blanket, like there's no blanket statement that covers all. It's complex, like you said. And do I think that it's convenient for executives for the remote work piece? Yes. But do I also think, but I do think employees are a huge part of that decision too. And it goes back to working parents, right? We do not have a country that supports working families. We don't.
Right.
Pay a crazy amount for childcare. I literally could not imagine having to be forced to go into an office 3 days a week,
Right.
even if it's a very reasonable, like understandable thing every week, maybe 3 times one week, maybe not the next week, because the quality of life that I have to be able to get
Yeah.
everything done that I need to with 2 small children is just something I'm not going to sacrifice.
Right.
Right. And a lot of
Right.
people like me, a lot that are doing that because of how our country is set up for working families. And so that's where I say, like, from the employee side, that's a leverage point that we didn't have before and now we do, because
Right.
of that. So
I mean, I think here's the last point on this. If we, we've talked about opening an office at some point in the blueprint future, and if we open up an office in San Francisco,
we'll
right?
delete this podcast.
Right. Well, the company, well, as I say, is the company will need, presumably, right, will need someone like me, very comfortable in my East Bay home office, right, to make that commitment, not because you're micromanaging me, but because the business will need me to be in that location to help
Yeah.
nurture and develop a team. That's a commitment I'll have to make, right? That won't be an easy commitment. Like, that will be a constraint on my time, my own availability, to do things in my community or sometimes with family, et cetera, right? And so I think that's the piece, right? It's like it is complicated for sure, but if we go in that path, we all know this. We're not going to open an office because, like, I feel like I need to have eyes on bodies to watch them work, right? That's foolish. It's going to be a commitment. It's going to be a sacrifice that I'll make, and if I make that, it's going to be because we think it's going to be better for not just ourselves and our top bottom line, but for the teams that we're looking to build and develop to become excellent across the board, right?
Yeah, totally. I agree.
Good stuff.
Yeah, all good points. And I would say that the biggest takeaway is never say never. And I think the biggest exciting part of all of this for me is that it's even a conversation that people are debating, because when I first came into the workforce, it was not even something that was even on the radar of
Right.
companies of a possibility.
Yeah, no,
And
it's a great
so
point.
with kind of the modern workforce, irregardless of working mothers, I think working parents, like you mentioned, Krissy, the system is not necessarily designed to make that simple, and having the autonomy and flexibility of working hours or working environment is a relatively inexpensive option for a company to offer a modern workforce. So I think that most people, like on this podcast that we're recording, would agree on more topics than not as it relates to the positives and negatives. But I think it'll continue to evolve, and it'll continue to be adapted based off of the needs of companies and employees alike. So wonderful topic to review. Anything anybody would add before we wrap?
I mean, just to your point from having this conversation, the importance of assuming positive intent across the
Yes.
board, right? So as you're all speaking and Krissy speaking with passion and conviction on the value of autonomy for working women, right? That's not something I can personally identify as a male, right? And not someone who's been seeing things from your point of view, right? And again, it's easy for us to get into shout from the rooftop mode, but the best discussions and debate happen when we assume positive intent, and that's the basis for empathy and great policy, right? Ultimately will help companies execute better
Totally.
and attract more talent because they've got thoughtful points of view on why they operate the way they do, right?
There's more choices, and that's what I love about this. It's not just a
Yes.
one option, all in office, there's more choices, and that in and of itself brings diversity and brings inclusion and all of those things. And that's what I love about it, right? We have choices. It's not just fit for one profile, and that's really nice. So
I think that's a great way to wrap on the power of choice and what that means for company and employee. Wonderful topic. Really appreciate all the thoughtful insights into the actual approach to remote work. And with that, we thank everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye, everyone.
bye.